strange kind of justice. When I worked with Virginia to write my memoir around Molly's death and Jack's birth, we divided the book up into 4 sort of sections, and one of them was called A Strange Kind of Justice. A strange sort of justice. Is there justice? What is justice? In a time where the definitions of words are often manipulated to meet the needs of the people speaking them, justice has become a tricky part of my life. One of the major themes in my podcast has been saying the quiet parts out loud. I started the podcast to publicly share my journey of losing Molly and where did it start and what was the first thing that cemented her death. And that's an impossible journey, but it was my motivation and my mission, and it remains that way sometimes. In massive self-reflection, obviously people are going to learn things about themselves, and one of the biggest things I learned is that my reactions to relationships, the people I seek, the people I get sucked in by, the people I aim to please, are often the ones who have an ulterior motive on their own side. And I fit the narrative well. Beautiful, wonderful people, many of them. I've had amazing relationships in my life, continue to do so. But I am often drawn to those who will ultimately not have my best interests at heart. I have learned, and I still continue to ponder and struggle with, my willingness to be quiet for people. Now, anyone that knows me knows I'm anything but quiet. But sometimes the class clown, with all their jokes, is hiding a multitude of pain. Robin Williams comes to mind, this amazing comedian who was miserably sad. John Denver, a beautiful singer, who was miserably sad. We have these very public people who thrive on making others happy. Does that make you happy? Yes? Purpose fulfilled. Maybe Molly's destiny would have been similar. When I look at the number of times in my life that I've been willing to keep other people's secrets, in the guise of self-preservation on my own part, but really to preserve them and to protect them, I'm dumbfounded by it. It's like a daily thing for me. I was just up at the track, getting ready for track camp. As I record this, it's still mid-June. We were talking about some of the city politicians involved in the redoing of Memorial Field and all that sort of thing. I talked about the massive support I have as a school board member, but it's silent support. People don't support me in public. That's somehow dangerous. So yeah, Barb, we love you. Keep doing it. But we're going to make believe we don't support you, and we're going to sort of publicly say we're on the other side, even though we're really on your side. I get a lot of that. I was at a funeral yesterday, and a friend of mine that taught at Concord High School and was there when I lost my job remarked that, he's a faithful listener to my podcast and he reads my blogs. And he remarked that I talked about how everybody disappeared from my life, that's how powerful Chris Rath was in her silencing of me. Nobody reached out to say, are you okay? Nobody. Every friend and colleague I had disappeared in an instant. And it was mind-boggling to me at the time. So one of the major protect the rapist events of my life was a lawsuit, medical malpractice lawsuit. I can't speak specifically to any of the events in that lawsuit in a public fashion, but I can talk about the process of a lawsuit. I have become good friends with and have assisted in the process of medical malpractice lawsuits with several people since Molly's death. I have learned how disgusting people can be when it comes to money and the easy manipulation of people who aim to please. The wanting to fit in so badly that you'll do anything to fit in, even if you know it's not quite right. Part 3 of the memoir is A Strange Kind of Justice. It has just 2 chapters in it now. Actually, I'll read them to you. The initial chapters are here, 6 of them. And while I cannot read the specific words, I can speak to them in a way that allows me to share what I took from the experience without giving away the specifics of what happened to me. So here's what's published in the book. Any fight for justice, especially when it comes to fighting for your dead child, is never clean, cut, or as satisfying a narrative as you see in the movies. In real life, the lines between the victims and the perpetrators are blurred. In real life, the legal process is less about truth and more about who can tell the most persuasive story. In real life, there's rarely closure, much less a sense of victory. Everything is a compromise. But we knew we needed to fight for Molly, and the fight carried us through this stage of grief. At the beginning of June, we received the pathology report, which revealed that Molly's brain tumor was benign. We'd suspected this from the start, but now we had the definitive biopsy results. The roller coaster of grief and elation that I'd been through over the past month as we said goodbye to Molly buried her, and then celebrated her through the musical, now turned to anger. Molly should never have died. The day after the news, we went to collect Molly's medical files from the children's hospital where she'd spent a week, unconscious, as we'd prayed for her to wake up. From the ER, where she had lain for 16 hours. From her pediatrician's office, where she had visited multiple times. We settled on an attorney, not because of his professional experience, but because of his manner and his character, a choice I would be deeply grateful for. And then the 6 long months of information gathering began. Every photograph and video of Molly and us as a family that we'd ever taken, every essay and diary entry and letter she'd written, her yearbooks, her school reports, bits of her dance recitals, her theater performances, her gymnastics meets, crates and crates of objects and recordings that summed up my little girl's life with us. Over 100 interviews with friends, family, nurses, doctors. Our attorney had a film created of Molly's life that represented who she was and what she meant to those around her and to the wider community. We booked a space in the local middle school auditorium and put out a message on Facebook inviting people to come and share their stories. We thought that a handful of close friends would show up. When we arrived, there were about 30 people. The film producer said she was pleased at the turnout. "This will help us make something good," she said. "Just wait," I said. "I think more people will show up." By the end of the filming session, we had filled the entire auditorium. 200 friends came to talk about Molly. Again, we were blown away by the love there was for Molly and by how much she'd clearly touched people's lives. Information gathering was a long, draining process. Our attorney said that the case could take as long as 5 years. But in a way, I was glad. Just as the funeral and the musical had taken my mind off the unbearable grief of losing Molly, this process, too, helped me to find a reason to get up off the living room floor. It gave me a purpose to keep living. If we couldn't have Molly back, at least we could fight for her. For legal reasons, there's little I can share about the process or outcome of the case. Much of it has been mentioned in the local press and can be found there. I wish I could say more because I think it could help people find themselves in a similar situation. I do, however, want to share this. The hardest part of the process, the part I wasn't prepared for, was how the process made me question myself as a mother. For a mother who is grieving deeply, who already feels guilt every second of every day about not having been able to keep her child alive, this felt like a particular kind of cruelty. Think about your life. Think about the things you've done right and the things you've done wrong. The things you're proud of and ashamed of. The things you'd go back and change and the things you'd hold up as victories, professionally and personally. They all form part of the mix of being human, of this journey that is life. We all acknowledge that we're a mix of all these things, and we trust that our best selves come out on top. Now imagine looking at all those bad parts of yourself, those mistakes, the things you're ashamed of, through a magnifying glass. Imagine those things becoming the most important part of the story of who you are. How would you feel about yourself? How would any of us feel about ourselves under that kind of one-sided scrutiny? I'd already put myself on trial. I'd already gone through every second of Molly getting sick, every second since the day she was born, trying to work out whether I'd missed something or whether I could have done something differently. And maybe there was something, a key moment, a turning point, that might have set events spinning off in a different direction, a direction that might have saved her. But that's not something I can ever know. Kenny and I did what all decent parents do. We observed our kids closely. We noticed when they were sick. We sought medical help when they were. We took them to their physicals. We found specialists when they needed it. We did what parents do. We cared for our girls as best we could. It all came out. Mine and Kenny's drinking. Kenny's debts. Our failed marriage. My relationship with another man. How I wasn't there when Molly was taken to the ER. I felt like it was my fault that she died from that tumor. One of the most persuasive parts of the bad mother narrative was this: my alleged drug addiction. It's hard to write about this. I know I don't like this version of myself, but I owe it to the story, to the mothers in America and all over the world, the women who live in motherland and struggle with this too, who know the truth that addiction is devastating. But there's another truth too, that addiction doesn't define you as a mother. Being a mother means being completely present for every moment of your child's life. Regular drug and alcohol use stops you from seeing what's going on right in front of you. It makes you absent, physically because of the effect of the drugs, and mentally, as you're constantly finding excuses to leave your home and your family, to chase down your next fix. I've been clean for a long time now, and my sobriety has given me clarity and heightened my guilt. I believe that if I'd never gotten involved in drug use, I would have seen Molly's pain more clearly, and somehow fought harder for her, and she'd still be here today. Perhaps that's a delusion, part of the guilt monster that chases me down every day. I guess we'll never know, but it's something I must live with. This I know to be true. I am a flawed mother, a flawed human being. The things I have done that I shouldn't have done, the things I should have done that I left undone. I have made more mistakes than I can count. I have a lifetime of regrets and poor decisions. I could have been a better mother to Molly and Gracie. Being married is hard. Being a parent is hard. Being a human being is hard. We get it wrong sometimes. Often. I never presented myself as a saint or as a perfect mother. If Molly were here today, she'd tell you about all the times I've let her down. The times we'd knocked heads and fought. The times I'd driven her crazy and disappointed her. But she'd also tell you that I loved her and Gracie more than anyone in the world. She'd tell you that I always put them first, that I would never have done anything to hurt them. She'd also tell you that my failures as a mother had nothing to do with her death. After years of fighting, there was no real resolution. What I can draw comfort from is that even though our fight wasn't world-changing in the way I'd hoped it would be, it formed part of those 1,000 tiny steps toward making parents aware of how to better advocate for their children. Every now and then I hear a story that gives me hope. A year after Molly's death, I was timing a track meet and a girl collapsed at the finish line. Someone called 911. I went over. The girl was struggling to breathe. Everyone was telling her to calm down, as if that was an option. "We need to give her some space and some air," I said, "and we need to stop telling her how she should be feeling." I stayed with her until the ambulance arrived. Even then, she didn't want me to leave. She understood that I was on her side, that I wasn't questioning her pain. Later, the athletic trainer came up to me. "Thanks for helping," he said. "Sure." "You know," he said, "my wife and I are physical therapists. We've been working with kids for years, but something's changed lately." "In what way?" I asked. "Have you heard the story of the little girl with a brain tumor? It's been in all the newspapers. My wife and I have been following it. It's really tearing us apart." My chest tightened. "What girl?" I asked. "Molly," he said, "a girl called Molly." Slowly I unzipped my jacket. I was wearing my Molly B t-shirt underneath. "I'm her mother," I said. He looked at me, stunned. My wife and I realized that perhaps we've been letting our young athletes down, that when they get hurt or complain about struggling with something, we've often dismissed them for being emotional or dramatic. And we're good people, just trying to do our jobs well, but we let them down. We're trying to change that now, to do better. I loved everything about that conversation, that Molly's death had some impact on how they were doing their work. And more than that this man, this trainer, had just told me about Molly's story without even knowing who I was. Molly's story was spreading, and it was saving lives. Those chapters, and the final chapter about Dr. Nathan, who was our pediatrician who always believed Molly and had been bizarrely absent from her care in the weeks and months leading up to her death, were included in the book and were included here. What wasn't included, and what was alluded upon by me here about my drug use, was how aggressive both sides become in any sort of civil lawsuit, criminal lawsuits as well. Before Molly's death, I used to love to watch shows like Criminal Minds, SVU, NCIS, all those crime stories where you're solving crimes. And I was always amazed at the amount of work that goes into manipulating the truth, taking an action or a reality and coloring it and painting it and shading it and photoshopping it to look like something it isn't. Enough truth to pass as truth while imposing enough doubt to call it a lie. One of the most eye-opening experiences for me in my medical malpractice experience, and one that I can speak to collectively because I have 4 moms who have all gone through their own versions in medical malpractice lawsuits, that we all are dumbfounded by how aggressive the medical community is on the legal side with making the parents look as bad as possible. My naive belief in the beginning of the process was that the hospital would apologize, that all hospitals and doctors' offices that face these things would apologize and acknowledge that they'd slipped up, they'd made a mistake, they'd missed something. That was never remotely the case. It was very, very clear that their job was to make me look as bad as possible, really look as bad as possible. I've talked a lot in this podcast about my relationships with narcissists, and I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can't diagnose somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. But I can tell you right now, I have enough experience that I would have no trouble calling very many people out in my life with having this. Sometimes they're just self-centered. Sometimes they're truly pathological or sociological or psychological crazy. The behavior is consistent. I found it a lot in my friendship with Robin. It was all over my relationship with Roy. Take an event, manipulate it to support a truth that it doesn't support in and of itself. A great example that I've used with my friend Amy was when I said the hardest part of my childhood was being told to lie all the time, that it made me very afraid of the truth, even when the truth wasn't scary, and that my inclination for a long time had been to make up stories about my life so that the truth wouldn't come out, even if the truth was okay. And that going to AA and dealing with the 12 steps had helped me move beyond that. She used that story to stand up in court and say that I admitted to being a pathological liar. It was a restraining order hearing, that I was awarded a restraining order against her and Bob. In the defense of me getting the restraining order, she claimed I was a self-confessed pathological liar. This manipulation of truth is prevalent in politics now. It's prevalent in both sides of the fight around gender and sexuality. It's hugely prevalent, Democrats, Republicans. Both sides spend hours trying to discredit and disprove and make the other side look bad, rather than look into the truths and realities of what they claim they're fighting for. My depositional experience and those shared with many other mothers that I've talked to, and I have to be vague here, so I'm sort of going to mix it all together, is the number of single events and sentences taken from my life that are used to paint mothers as bad mothers. My troubles with alcohol, the fact that I lost my job, and some of the details around that was very public. My relationship with Roy, and clearly I was unstable, a terrible mother. And I remember the biggest thought that I came out of my depositions with, and my experience, is that what really seemed logical to me is that only perfect mothers deserve good health care for their children. In a 12-hour deposition, when 8 of the 12 hours are spent on discrediting the mother's ability to be a good mother, to make the mother look bad, to question every bad decision the mother made years before the mother's child was sick or in the accident or ate the food or had the tumor or whatever it was, took the pill that caused them to die, I came away with a general feeling that a logical argument back to them could be, so what you're telling me is only the children of perfect mothers deserve quality health care. I have a good friend that I've known for years who works in the legal profession on the side of medical malpractice. I have another one now, a girl that I watched grow up, live next door to me, that works for the medical profession around malpractice. Please understand, there are malpractice lawsuits that have no business being filed, where everything was done right, and you have grieving people who want to blame somebody. My situation is not that, and there isn't anybody on either side of my issue that will say it was a series of unfortunate events in a way that supports Molly's death or justifies it. When you can't fight for the mistakes the people you represent made, you have to make the other side look as bad as possible. When you can't support a truth that you're being paid big money to promote, you have to discredit the truth of the other side. And this is the reality of our legal system across the board, not just with me. One of the hardest things to do in reading a lot of the summaries of the medical reports, and these were medical files that are mine, was the number of times in every doctor's visit, unknown to me, the doctors wrote notes about thinking Molly was faking her illness. Every single pediatrician appointment we took her to, there were notes that claimed she was anorexic, that she was a typical stressed teenager, that she was attention-seeking. All of them. That's in her medical files. That was really hard for me to read. Further hard to try to justify. Remember, I'm a bad mother now, so anything I say about these things would be not to be believed. This is what making me look like a bad mother sets up. How could you not see your daughter was anorexic? Molly wasn't anorexic. Molly loved to eat. In the latter stage of her tumor, she puked all the time. It's hard to eat when you're constantly throwing up what you eat. I have some very vivid memories of her pushing food around on her plate. and taking little teeny bites with her fingers at the dinner table while she talked. And I remember thinking, that's anorexic behavior. And then 2 days later, watching her go through the back of Kenny's vending truck looking for honey buns and cinnamon buns, and eating her carrots and glass of water before she ate the cinnamon buns because of the healthy food first rule in the house. Some of the things the doctors told her to do were to eat nuts, increase your protein. She did all of these things. She actually gained 5 pounds in a week between 2 appointments, and still her head wasn't looked at. These were the things that we struggled through and that I continue to struggle through. I do not feel that Molly got justice, and I realize that maybe Molly will never get justice, that the way she gets justice is in the invisible actions of people we don't know. That athletic trainer that I just read about, and the way that they changed their behavior. I would like to think the doctor's offices and emergency rooms and hospitals that were involved in Molly's care have changed their behaviors. Given the fact that I am fully aware of 2 lawsuits that are directly related to care in the same ER that Molly spent time in, I feel like they've changed nothing. And that's hard to take. If I could provide an analogy that I wished I could have included in the book, and I feel I can include here, a medical malpractice lawsuit is an entire legal effort not to get to the truth, but to eventually, if there's a trial, convince a jury that each side's version of the truth is more true. So my version of the truth would have focused on the lack of good care that Molly had received. I actually didn't really want to do that, with the exception of 2 or 3 individuals in the emergency room on the day that she died. I truly felt that for the most part, doctors were doing their job. They were working hard to take care of our family and to find out what was wrong. They made observations. They gave us things to try. I didn't want to get mean on a personal level. But in the process, that's exactly what needs to happen. Our job on my side with the dead child is to paint the most horrifying picture of how Molly was treated. Language is powerful. I should have known going in that their job would be to paint the worst picture of me as a mother. Again, language is powerful. I realized in the middle of it that the medical malpractice lawsuit is just like any social revolution. Eventually, the process loses sight of what was being fought for in the first place. Our lawsuit took 2 years, and I believe it only took 2 years because it was so obvious how well-known Molly was and how poorly she was treated. Midway through the process of this lawsuit, the depositions, the information gathering, the secrets we have on each other, the life mistakes, they have all these, Barb's a drug addict, Barb sleeps around, Barb's an alcoholic, Barb's never home, Barb had a boyfriend, all the ways they wanted to make me look bad had nothing to do with Molly's death. 0. Nothing to do with finding the root cause of the mistakes that were made and fixing them so no more Mollys would die at the hands of doctors not paying attention. That was nowhere. That was nowhere in their fight. And sadly, it became nowhere in ours. As we went along, the job is to find ways to discredit the doctors, so that even when they say they did the best they could, the jury will believe that the best they could was lousy and not good enough in the first place. This was all very uncomfortable for me. And the analogy that came up in the process of writing the book and talking with Virginia was a house on fire. So you build a house or you move into a house and you make sure you have smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms. You make sure that you have plans of escape from every upstairs room in your house. You have a meeting point in your yard. You unplug things. You don't have plugs near water. You don't have too many things plugged in at once. You have an electrical system in your house that meets the standards and passes the tests. You do everything right. And then there's a fire. And so you rush around and you get everyone out of your house and you call 911 and the fire department comes. And instead of putting out the fire, they start questioning you about, well, what did you do to prevent the fire? It was an amazing analogy, and I'm going to read it because I can't do justice to the words. We were not negligent, is how we felt. We did what parents do. We cared for our girls as best we could. Making us feel as though somehow our actions might have led to her death rather than those of the medical professionals trained to recognize, diagnose, and treat a brain tumor is ludicrous. It would be ludicrous for any family, right? It's like blaming homeowners for not putting out a massive fire caused by an electrical fault in their home when there was a fire engine and a troop of firemen standing outside doing nothing to help. This is fabulous. We put in the smoke alarms. We had an evacuation plan. We made sure we didn't have any old or dangerous appliances. We cared for our home. We took all the precautions reasonably required of us, and then there was a fire. And we didn't understand where it came from or why. So we called in the professionals. We dialed 911. We relied on the firefighters to come and help. And they just stood outside and watched our house burn to the ground. And then they blamed us for not giving them enough details about the fire, or for not having cared enough for our yard, or having failed to pay the latest water bill, none of which was relevant to the fact that they hadn't done their job. They hadn't put out the fire. That's what our lawsuit felt like. Kenny and I felt like the couple standing outside the burning house, watching their lives disappearing in smoke, being told that their testimony about the fire and how it started should be dismissed because they weren't reliable human beings. If they can paint a bad enough picture of the mother, they won't have to pay any money. This analogy I've gone over in my head a million times. As a mother that's gone through this, I get asked all the time to help other families who have lost children. It was just Concord High School graduation yesterday, and someone that I know came up and said, "Oh, there's a girl over there whose family you helped with your lawsuit. You know, when their daughter died, you were really helpful to them. And she just pointed out that you were the one that helped them so much, and they really appreciated it." I know full well that family was questioned about all the things they didn't do in their home to prevent it from catching on fire. And as such, that's an excuse for the firefighters not putting it out. It's a fantastic analogy. The other piece they really tried to blast me with is my addiction. Now, let me be clear here. I had no addictive issues with drugs before Molly died. I hadn't smoked pot or snorted coke. I had done nothing but drink alcohol for 30, 40 years. After Molly died, I've talked about my addiction to coke and how desperate it was. Molly was already dead when this happened. And they dove in to discrediting me and calling me nothing but a useless addict as a way to discredit me in my lawsuit. It was behavior after Molly's death. Molly was already dead. So my feeling was not only was I told I didn't do enough to keep my house from burning down, but the way I responded to losing my house was also simply terrible. And as such, I probably didn't deserve a new house or the money to build one. During the active parts of our lawsuit were my most active times in using the drugs. Talk about a juxtaposition of trying really hard to be a good mother and trying really hard not to die and to deal with everything that was going on. This all was incredibly difficult. I look with awe at 3 of the mothers I know that have much more active foundations than mine, that dove into building a legacy for their child long before I did. And I'm envious, and I think, well, they're better mothers than me. But I know that they fought the same battles. I often talk about how May is a really hard month for me, and June is a month of new beginnings. June is my second Molly death month. I would rather have come away from it with not a penny and let the world know. And let them know that I slept with Roy and went to Amsterdam. Let them know of all of his atrocious behavior that, of course, couldn't be included. Let them know about my drug use, how hard it was for me. Let them know all the details of my job loss. Because in sharing all the details, the actions of all the people involved get shared. And I don't walk around protecting the Jean Connollys and the Chris Raths and the doctors at the hospitals and doctors' offices and the attorneys, right? And all the nurses and the hospitalists and everyone involved. I don't have to protect their secrets anymore. I wrote that I didn't care about the money. I hate the money. I felt like a sellout, and I still do sometimes. I'm not the only victim of that experience, Molly's experience. A couple of medical professionals immediately left their jobs on their own. I don't know why they left the medical profession. I know that they do. I know one of the nurses, her life was profoundly affected, not just by what happened to Molly and being told to be quiet about it and being asked right away her opinions on what happened in the ER and then being told not to come to work for 2 weeks and then, oh my gosh, over and over these things. She would tell her story in a heartbeat because she's a kind, good person. I have friends in my life who are friends with some of the other people involved in what happened. They would gladly tell their stories. And then the other side, Lenora, lying about referring me to my attorneys and trying to steal a referral fee. $300,000 is a lot of money to make off someone's dead child. And the knowledge that she worked together with Robin, who spent hours with me, 2 years of her life, hours with me, until the truth came out about the money. And then once again, I became this vile, disgusting human being. So why share all this? Why now? Well, I've reached out to Jodi Picoult. Not that she'll ever reach out back. Jodi Picoult writes amazing fiction. And a lot of her fiction centers around medical stuff or legal things and abuse and school shootings and all saying the quiet things out loud. And I would love to give her 7 years of emails and text messages back and forth between Roy and I, and my job loss and all the restraining order stuff, all the things that led up to the instability in my family. I'd love to give her all the legal stuff around my job loss. I'd love to give her the medical records and all of my medical malpractice stuff, all of it. Let her just read it and immerse herself in it and create an amazing piece of fiction that would tell Molly's story in a way that legally would pass all the muster, because it's fiction after all. $1 a book. Could I have $1 a book for the Molly B Foundation? All I've focused on right now is using Dead Molly money to help children with musical instruments and violin, all these positive things that help kids. And that's very fluffy and kind, and the kids like it. But I'm running out of Molly money. I'm very, very quickly going to stop spending any money on anything that doesn't immediately benefit me back somehow financially. That didn't come out sounding right, but that's kind of how I mean. I'm going to start really focusing the foundation on the medical aspects of Molly's reality. When I was at Dartmouth Hitchcock, they were very, very clear that there needs to be something that we should call the Molly Protocol. A health protocol designed for women, young girls and women, who are overlooked all the time in the medical profession. Dramatic, not to be listened to, stressed, hormonal, all the things that female-bodied humans go through, especially when it comes to medicine. And to do that, I have to be able to share more of what happened to Molly, saying the quiet parts out loud. When I give the Molly B Scholarship at Concord High School, I'm constantly looking for ways that young people can look at something bad and utilize it to make something good. 2 of the speakers at Concord High School's graduation this year are Spirit of Molly B Scholarship winners. Both of them in their speeches talked about the losses they'd suffered and how those losses shaped and formed who they were as human beings. Losing a dad to addiction and alcohol, losing a grandmother to cancer and then learning how to be a caretaker and train the family to care for the grandmother so she could die at home. Being super talented in science and being told she should go for pre-med and have this solid, great career, but knowing that her passion was in the arts. And getting turned down by college after college for musical theater. And then finally getting accepted and going to the college that she chose and realizing that every no gave her her perfect yes, and how great that was. I am definitely using Molly's death to do good things, but I strongly feel it's time to take it one step further. In this episode, being much more honest about the nasty ugliness of medical malpractice, and please know the nasty ugliness of many social revolutions that completely lose sight of what they were fighting for to begin with, and then become exactly what they initially were fighting against. Trial at my lawsuit would have had nothing to do with Molly's death. It would have been all about making me look bad and me making them look bad, and which one looks the least bad, and that's who we decide will win. Not what happened to Molly and how do we fix it. Not where are our flaws in medical care and how do we rectify them. Look at any social issue going on right now. It very quickly turns good people into enemies. When you're asked to pick a side, you have to say that the other side is wrong and bad. That creates nothing but loss and division. I'm reluctant to pick sides anymore because the truth is lost when you pick a side. The truth about Molly's death is lost when my job is to make the doctors look bad and their job is to make the mother look bad. The truth is lost around equality between women and men when men seek to make women look bad and women seek to make men look bad. Or gender in general, when one side simply seeks to make the other side look bad. Racial equity, social class, where you live, countries and, ethical warfare and biological warfare, religious warfare. When the fight becomes me telling you your religion's wrong and mine's right, then there is no winner. You're just convincing people that what you think is right. And I think it's why I am so reluctant to ever take a political side. Because the truth is always somewhere embroidered into the realities of both opposing sides. Every revolution has a truth in the middle. Anyway, I love you, Molly. I'm recording this in June, 8 years after taking the Be Quiet money. I'm ready to turn the corner and sort of pick a side, I guess. And I promise I won't get lost in the fight. I won't make it about the fight. I will keep it about you. Have a good day, everybody. Be good to yourself. Be good to yourself. Trust your gut. Don't let people tell you you're a bad mother. Don't let people tell you the word mother is somehow divisive or oppressive. It's a beautiful word. Be good to someone else. Acknowledge their struggles and their discomforts. Fight the desire to make them about right and wrong. And as always, have a good day, everybody. Hey, thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Feel free to leave a review and share my stories with your friends. Please reach out with your own stories, as I love connecting with my listeners. If you would like to get to know Molly, head over to mollybfoundation.org to see what she is all about. If you want to see what I'm up to next, you can find me on Instagram at barb_444, on Facebook as Barb Higgins, and at my website, 1000tinysteps.com. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter, a weekly way to find out what's up in the life of Barb Higgins.